Okay, good evening all. Welcome to the October 19th, 2021 regular meeting of the City of South Pasadena Mobility and Transportation Infrastructure Commission. Call the meeting to order. Liana, would you please call roll?
Absolutely. Chair Abelson,
Here.
Vice Chair Fisher,
Here.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Here.
Commissioner Liu,
Here.
and Commissioner Hughes.
Here.
Okay, thank you, Liana. And Councilmember Primuth advised that he would be a few minutes late. And then we have Liana DeWitt for staff tonight. Let's see, next up, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Liu, would you please lead us? Thank you. Okay, item 1 on our agenda is public comment. Do we have anyone in the audience with public comment? All right, please step forward.
Am I supposed to speak into the mic as well? Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Nicole Hofstad Ward, and I'm here to address I'm sorry, this makes it a little difficult.
Just if you could speak up a little, that'd be great.
I'm here to address an issue at the intersection of Gravellia and Park and to offer a potential solution for your consideration.
Gravellia and
It's Gravellia and Park Avenue and Gravellia Street. I've been a resident of South Pasadena for 20 years, and 16 of those I've been at this current address in that area. Over the years, I've seen a marked increase in the number of vehicles traveling Gravellia to and from the freeway, as well as an increase in the speed with which these vehicles are traveling. This has created many challenges both for drivers trying to turn onto Gravellia from Park Avenue and for people trying to cross Gravellia at the crosswalk. This area has many families with children and pets, etc. And I've witnessed far too many near misses on both vehicular and pedestrians, which could have ended very tragically. Thank goodness none of them did. There was also a study conducted at this intersection to determine whether or not a stop sign was warranted. Unfortunately, it was not warranted. Although I do have to say that when they did the study, it was over a holiday, so the numbers may have been a little off. But that's not what I'm here to discuss. As I am compelled to find a workable solution, I would like to ask you to consider installing rapid rectangular flashing beacons at this intersection of Park and Gravellia at the crosswalk which crosses Gravellia. And also for the project to be funded along with the other Measure M projects. I do hope you will seriously consider this request, and I thank you all for your time.
Well, thank you for coming and thank you for bringing this to our attention. I was not aware of it. And I appreciate your proposing a solution as well. And I just had a question and then
Sure.
anybody else. So when was the stop sign warrant analysis done? Do you recall?
Okay. I should have written the dates down, but it was, I could probably get that information to you. It wasn't that long ago, maybe maybe a year or so ago.
Huh. Okay.
I'm not certain, but they did the study. We were hoping that they would install stop signs to kind of curb the speeding that occurs there.
Right.
And then also to allow the traffic which comes up Park to be able to turn left or right a little easier, because there's also parking on the street, which limits the vision. But as it was shown, it wasn't warranted. But also for people crossing over, I think that the beacons would be a nice safety feature so that people can actually see. Because I've seen so many near misses that could have ended really badly.
Okay.
So thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Yeah, I had one question, Nicole. One block to the east, is there not a flashing activated crosswalk there?
I believe they have the overhead. Are you referring to the one by the Garfield Park, the north? side of
Yes, just
Garfield?
on the east side of,
They do
Garfield
have
Park.
one on the corner. What is the name of that street? Oh, yes, on Stratford. And it's the overhead light that flashes. I don't actually know how effective that is because I actually have seen people trying to use it and cars are kind of dismissive. But yes, you're right. There is.
so
some
that's
effort.
one block to the east. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
very
so
much.
much for coming.
Thank you,
Thank
Nicole.
you.
Is there any other live public comment? And okay, all right, thank you. And I'll note, I think there were a total of 10 emails that came in connection with tonight's meeting, emailed public comment. We were sent the emails late this afternoon. I just took a quick look when I had a chance to, and it looked like 9 of them involved requests to include Arroyo Drive in the Slow Streets program that's currently in the works. And there was one from a resident on Orange Grove reporting a couple of additional accidents, I think within the last month or so, and concerns regarding trucks illegally using that route, even though there's a signed prohibition. So unless we have any other public comment, we will move forward. None. Okay, we'll close public comment and move right along to number 2 on the agenda, which are the minutes of our last meeting on September 21st. So I know that the draft that was distributed incorporated revisions I had suggested, and then there was a revised version that came out this afternoon, I think with Commissioner Fisher's comments. I had one adjustment to that, but wanted to check to see if anybody else had any. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Hughes.
I wasn't at the meeting, but just one small thing under commission-led discussion, item 5, the last under time, we're missing a period.
Look
That's
at
all I
that.
saw.
Okay. Good catch. Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Dunlap.
I have a change under commission-led discussions, item 6. It says Commissioners Dunlap and Liu gave an update regarding the Metro Safe Streets
Ah.
program. I think that's the Open Streets program,
Okay. Great.
open instead of safe.
Very good. Very good. Anyone else? Okay, so looking at the revised minutes sent out this afternoon, I just wanted to add, I already scribbled it down here. So let's see, so it's in again, section 9, Commissioner Communications. The paragraph starting Commissioner Fisher inquired about actions being taken to restore the visibility of the South Pasadena rock sign. The end of that paragraph, it says Chair Abelson concurs with Commissioner Fisher's concerns regarding the city of South Pasadena rock sign. So first, Fisher's should just have an apostrophe, Fisher apostrophe S. And then I want to change just beginning to say, okay, Chair Abelson, and then here's the new language, had previously followed up with DPWD Chalet, is it Chalet? What's the right pronunciation of that? Chalet, okay. So I mean, adding the words had previously followed up with DPWD Shala in this regard. And then picking up concurs with Commissioner Fisher's. It just got lost in the rewrite, that concept. So if there are no other suggested changes, can I get a motion to approve the minutes as revised? Second, anyone?
I second to approve the
Okay.
revised minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Liu. All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, so the motion passes. And welcome, Council Liaison Primmett. No worries. Okay, so we've concluded item 2, moving right along to item. I guess we went. It's the third item, but it's 4 on the agenda. So we're now commission-led discussion. So the first item up is SR 710 Mobility Improvement Projects Ad Hoc Committee, which would be Commissioner Fisher and myself. Commissioner Fisher, anything to?
I've received no reports of anything new in this regard, unless
Yeah.
you know of something.
Neither have I. And we're looking forward to seeing the draft scope of the study for the Fair Oaks SR 110 interchange, but we have not seen that as of yet. And that's as far as we know. Does anybody have any comments, anything they wish to say on that item? No? Yes.
Just a quick question. Do we know for sure that we've got the clearance to the city of Pasadena? Because I thought the whole was going to go all the way through with the synchronization from even discussions from the Alhambra, the Alhambra thinking their concerns. And then as we would start Fair Oaks at Huntington, going all the way up Fair Oaks. And I thought at one point we were synchronizing the signals in conjunction with the city of Pasadena. Is that still happening? Is that still part of the scope? Because they were supposedly going to come to the table, make sure that their portion of the lights were synchronized, so it would all work in concert for the region. I haven't heard Pasadena mentioned in some time.
If I may add one thing about synchronization is typically after, if signals are more than a half mile apart, you really lose good platooning between the signals. And then so sometimes you'll have vehicles, a platoon travel through maybe 8, 9, 10 signals. And then there might be some distance before they reach the next signal. So typically, sometimes your coordinated system might break. And then vehicles might stop at the next signal. And so I think it's a good question as to whether this is being coordinated with this signal, the city of Pasadena. I wouldn't see it as critical because there is such a large distance on Fair Oaks between the 110 ramps and I'm drawing a blank on the signal just north of that that the coordinated, your platoon might stop at one of those signals either way. So as far as like coordination goes,
My concern is if I want to go back to the beginning a little, is when the project was first started to be outlined, part of it was to help with the flow of traffic to be expedite through the corridor so that it would in essence sort of speed traffic in lieu of a tunnel or connection a la 710 situation. So, and I thought going back quite a ways that there was part of the issue was the synchronization and the software and the hardware and everything we were going to need to get that all in place. So I'm just bringing it up because I just don't want us to go too far down the line and everything, and then all of a sudden it's, oh, you didn't synchronize in the sense that they're over here doing something and we're over here doing something and it's not going to mesh.
Right. Well, I know it's a good question, and we can certainly follow up with Shahid and Commissioner Fisher. Correct me if I'm wrong. The synchronization component is part of the Rogan-funded project.
Right.
And I know that contract was recently awarded. I haven't heard of any significant developments that have occurred as of yet in connection with that contract. So I think you're bringing up this topic. It's a good trigger for us to go back to Director Abbas and find out, what stage are we at there? And is this part of the conversation and part of what the consultant was going to have in mind in preparing, the study and design and so forth?
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would like to add, just based on my experience, synchronization, it doesn't require a lot of hardware. It's not a massive project. Really, synchronization, you just need every signal to have the same time. And so when if we're all traffic signals, when my watch says it's 3 o'clock in 5 minutes, everyone's watch says that it's 3 o'clock in 5 minutes. And so we're all working together in concert as vehicles travel through. And you don't need a ton of infrastructure for that. You can just have a GPS unit on each signal. Certainly some systems do have interconnect and a hardwire connection between the two, but synchronization, I'm not sure what, I haven't looked in the city of South Pasadena's cabinets, but assuming they all have the same time, there's some way for every signal to get the same time, whether that be through GPS. They probably aren't interconnected. There's no reason why some of those signals couldn't be synchronized now. If there's just some way for those signals to get the time through like a GPS unit.
Yeah, 'cause I just remember going back to a lot of the discussion had to do with like I thought wiring, hardware. There was a lot of Abbas that talked about all the construction and work we needed to do for all this synchronization, hardware and software, and then control where the control's going to be. Who's making the judgments on some of that. So if I think back, I also think a lot of it had to do with, yes, we had to synchronize with Pasadena, but again, I haven't heard any of that in a while. But as we've been working on this for at least 5 years, back to 2018, I think, that technology's gone further. So to your point about wireless and such, that maybe that the way it had been thought of 5 years ago, there's more modern technology that can be effective. I just hope it's all in the scope, and I know in the able hands of Commissioner Fisher, Vice Chair Fisher, he will look for all those things.
Yeah, we probably should get an update when we have the engineering staff with us.
Now, my recollection from talking to Director Abbas is that there's first a project to lay the actual cables, actually the fiber that'll go all the way from South Pasadena all the way down to Alhambra, even to the Metro. Metro has like a communications hub. And so that there will be a continuous fiber for communications along that entire corridor. And then the second step is to actually add the equipment, the sensors and all of that. And then the third is to put in the cameras and the computers to integrate all that. So I think between everything I've heard, all the technology that we have is going to be put into the corridor. And then of course, we have to fine tune it to make sure our traffic flows smoothly.
Okay, so if we have nothing further on 4, we'll move along to item 5, Ramona Avenue Neighborhood Traffic Management Ad Hoc Committee. The same two of us. You want to start us off?
Yeah, I'll talk about the site visit that we had with Hassan and Tatovec. And we met them around 7:45 at the intersection of Oak and Ramona. And we first looked at the queuing of traffic and the approach of traffic coming to Holy Family Church School. And we noticed a different pattern than what we had seen, or what I had seen back in April, May. That cars come south on Ramona, turn right on Oak, enter the church school parking lot. And instead of going all the way through to Rollins Street, they come back out onto Oak in the morning, and then many of them make a right turn and will either go south on Oak or go south on Ramona or north on Ramona. And that's a different pattern than what we saw again back in April and May. And it seemed to unnecessarily increase traffic on that one block of Ramona Avenue between Oak Street and Rollins Street. While we were there, I asked a school representative who was at the driveway on Oak Street, trying to make sure that cars get in effectively and to manage any pedestrians crossing. I asked her why cars didn't go all the way through to Rollins Street. And she said, oh, well, the pattern is supposed to be that when the high school resumes, meaning South Pasadena High School, that they're supposed to come back out on Oak. And she gave me a name, which I don't recall right now, of the lady who said is supposed to be the pattern. The lady I spoke with was, she had short hair and a very distinct Irish accent. But maybe that was the agreement, and maybe that was the understanding when South Pasadena High School and Holy Family School opened up at similar times. But now Holy Family starts at around 8 o'clock, and South Pasadena High starts at 8:30. So as Commissioner Abelson, Gasson, and Tatovic, all of us then looked at Rollins Street. There didn't appear to be any congestion on Rollins Street that would be a reason for precluding Holy Family School traffic from proceeding straight north and then making a right turn on Rollins Street, at which point they could turn onto Fremont Avenue. So we noted that they were, again, coming back out on Oak, and then many of them were turning right onto Ramona Avenue and then turning right again at Rollins Street to access the signal at Fremont and Rollins Street. So that's something that we think should be examined again. We looked at some other restrictions that were posted. I think, Larry, was that the no left turn for Rollin at Fremont?
Right.
Okay, so we noted there was a no left turn restriction for eastbound Rollin at Fremont Avenue, yet there didn't appear to be any compelling need for it, in that the pedestrian traffic crossing Fremont at Rollin appeared to be fairly light, and the number of vehicles proceeding westbound on Rollin at Fremont was not heavy by any means. And we suspect that that no left turn restriction during the morning hours was put in at another time when the start times for the high school were different than they are today. So based on that, it appeared that there were a number of situations in the morning that maybe were a little outdated. The traffic flow pattern through Holy Family Church School and the restrictions that we saw on the street. We also again discussed with Hassan what we believed was the need for a school loading zone on the frontage of the South Pasadena High School on Fremont Avenue. If you provide drop-off loading on Fremont Avenue in front of the parking lot, and then further south of, what is it, Bank Street?
Yes.
Bank Street. Then they are loading there and they are not inclined to try to load on the neighborhood streets such as Ramona Avenue. Hassan indicated he needs to look into it further, but it remains a recommendation from several months ago that we believe is still warranted and should proceed without too much further delay. At this point, I'll let Commissioner Abelson add on to that and his observations during the PM.
Great, thank you. So just to follow on to Vice Chair Fisher's comments. So what we were thinking with regard to Holy Family Church is that the traffic travel straight through the church property and then turn right onto Rollin and not left back into the neighborhood and to conflict with high school traffic. So that there would be a left turn restriction out of the church Rollin Street exit, AM and PM peak hours. So they'd have to turn right and then they could get to Fremont, and then that turn restriction would be removed. And then they could turn right or left or go straight when they get to Fremont. Very interesting observation while we were watching folks drop off for the high school in the morning. We were standing on Fremont at Bank, looking both north and south, but what we would see is so that the frontage that John just described along the school parking lot north of Bank and then the school buildings south of Bank, which right now it's all red zone. Even though it's red zone, folks were using it informally and perhaps not legally to drop off their kids in the morning. And they were doing it, we saw no issues with that other than the fact that it's currently not legal. We saw no issues with the safety or the movements and what they were doing. And to us, it sort of demonstrated that what we're proposing to use that frontage for pickup and drop off could be very successful and wouldn't interfere with Fremont through traffic or cause unnecessary safety issues. So that was interesting. What we did not see when we were there with staff in the morning was the backup of traffic on Ramona south of Oak. Because the traffic pattern, right, is the way that the church school has it is that folks come up Ramona, come north up Ramona from either Pine or Huntington, then they turn right on Oak, easterly, then they turn left into the driveway. And they don't allow people coming from Fremont onto Oak to turn right into the driveway. So they have this very fixed pattern. So it's very interesting. In the morning, we did not see any lineup of cars on Ramona. We saw a bit of a lineup on Oak, but that was it. After following up with a resident, I went back one afternoon. I was there between about 2:30 and 3 on a weekday, a regular school schedule weekday. And the backup of cars on Ramona was impressive. And it went almost all the way to Huntington at one point. It was quite staggering. And what they do is they essentially double park, right? They park just to the left of the parking lane, sometimes blocking driveways, sometimes not. And as I was sitting there watching it, I heard at least a couple of times folks trying to get out of their driveway who had to honk so people would clear a path so they could get in or out. So it demonstrated to me that even though we didn't see it that particular morning, that there is a clear problem with cars lining up on Ramona to pick up their kids, and it's quite expensive, and it's about a half an hour all in, I think. But while it's there, it's quite impressive and significant and impactful, I think. What was also interesting is there are also cars, and I'm not sure how it's broken up. There were also cars lining up to pick up their school kids on the south curb of Rollin, between Ramona and Fremont. There were cars parked there. In between parked cars, there were cars waiting to pick up kids. And then there were cars on Fremont, on the church frontage, waiting to pick up kids. So they have it sort of spread around, and it sort of impacts the entire area. And I took videos, and photos of some interesting turning movements of folks on Rollin, on Ramona, between Rollin and Oak. And it demonstrated to me that there is in fact a very significant problem with the way that they're routing traffic through the neighborhood. And we'd already come up with some recommendations, and there is, of course, this satellite lot they have east of Fremont, which if they were able to use it successfully would solve the problem. But we need to find ways that they can route this traffic out of the neighborhood, whether it's onto Fremont or elsewhere, so that it doesn't line up there. So that was interesting. And then one other thing is high school related. We talked about the pickup and drop off in Fremont, the intersection of Diamond and Linden, okay, which is a sort of oddball offset intersection, where there's been discussion about various concerns and issues and recommendations. And by the time we got there, it was too late. And the traffic had already quieted. But I calendared this Monday morning and I went out, which was yesterday, and I went out for about a half an hour and took some video. And they're probably like 15, 20, 25 max minutes where it can be a bit chaotic there. There's a lineup of cars going south on Diamond, south of Linden, that squiggles around and starts heading up Monterey. They're the folks coming down Diamond that are going straight onto Linden to head to the school. They're the kids crossing on the crosswalk there, which is semi-protected. I saw a couple of folks not stop. I saw a couple of students almost get hit. So it's an intersection that seems to need some attention to. One suggestion that John and I came up with was a new stop sign on Diamond at Linden, west of the intersection. I mean, it's part of the intersection, but the westerly side of the intersection. And there was concern about whether there was a need. It seems like there is. And then what kinds of impacts it could have on Monterey if we put a stop sign there and cars back up. So I think further study needs to be done there, but I think what we propose may be a solution. You know, the question is, you know, it's really a half an hour max problem in the morning. I think in the afternoons, the time that kids get out is a little more spread out, so it isn't as intense. But it can get challenging. It's the crosswalk that causes the concern, and I don't think an RFB is the solution. I think something more needs to be done. So anyway, we have our list of recommendations from several months ago. I know staff is more interested in some of them than others. I know we are pushing to have them move forward with them. And I know staff's sort of challenged at the moment. But I'm hopeful we can get some of these things forward, at least working with the church to get the flow through the school more effective, putting restrictions in or removing them where needed to keep that flow moving away from the neighborhood, getting a parking and loading zone in front of the school property. And you know what we talked about too is that's signage and striping, right? And if it's unsuccessful, it's fairly easy to modify or to change. But if we don't do anything, then we can't make any progress. So we're hopeful we can get some things moving forward. And I know the residents and the neighbors are very concerned. So it'd be great to get something happening. But we're on it and we're gently pushing.
The ideas I know that's come up is to again see if there is a viable way to use that satellite area, because it's a good size,
Yeah.
and you definitely could get that as a split. And even if you had it work in tandem, that you had two options for drop off in the morning and pick up in the afternoon, that would help with
Right.
the traffic up.
It certainly would help with that impressive pickup line in the afternoon. And maybe it can be split up based on school age, you know, the youngers
The older could
on
cross
campus, the
street.
others satellite. But as far as I don't know if our recommendation regarding use of the satellite lot has moved forward much. I'm not quite sure.
Because there is there's right there at the high school parking lot, there is a signal. So for safety of children, there is a, a real signal. So for them to be able to go, not that far, and then cross to get over and then go down to the parking, that satellite parking lot, there is a protection because there is an actual signal as opposed to just a crosswalk.
Right, there's one at Oak, one at Rollin, one at Bank, and they all have marked pedestrian crosswalks on both the north and the south legs of the intersection. So, yes, the controls are there,
Right.
yeah, for sure. Any other thoughts, comments? Input?
I imagine that they would need a crossing guard if we suggest any drop off or pickup across Fremont. I can't imagine the school would take on the liability of not having a crossing guard. So that's something that we should keep in mind and figure out how they would get a crossing guard or train existing staff to do that. But it does require training.
Good point.
That's a good point. As far as what's ideal is what's ideal is for them to, from Oak Street, access the parking lot, or the ideal situation as is right now. And then make a right turn, head north through the parking lot, make a right turn and roll it, and then head out on Fremont. It's that just because the parking lot queues up and it isn't efficient that it's quicker to not go through the parking lot to use the neighborhood.
Well, I think if they do that U through the parking lot and then come back out, then the traffic is being dumped right back out into the neighborhood, and then it's dispersing through the neighborhood instead of using streets that are probably more appropriate for them. I mean, these aren't neighborhood kids driving a block to go home, right? They're driving some distance. So I think that what we're proposing is a more efficient use, movement of traffic, and it keeps the traffic from congesting in the neighborhood.
Oh.
through the neighborhood.
No, I agree. I think my question is more for those who are just avoiding the parking lot altogether.
Oh.
Is it because the parking lot is inefficient? It just takes more time to go through the parking lot, that it's quicker just to drop off on Oak or.
Yeah, I don't know why they did that. But I saw it, especially in the afternoon in the pickup time, right? Primarily the folks are lining up on Ramona and going through the school lot. But yeah, there are these ancillary folks that are doing things, and I'm not sure why they're doing it.
Mhm.
I'm sure it has to do with convenience.
Right.
Although I would hope that the church would be telling folks, not to. But
Sometimes if you're running late, do a lot of things.
right,
And as far as like the turn restriction from that idea for exiting Holy Family, would that just be during school hours? Would that be, okay,
yeah,
not 24/7, just
Right.
during school hours? Thank you.
Commissioner
Sure.
Hughes.
One of the interesting things might be that in the morning when you're dropping the child off, the child is there and there's quick kids out of the car and grab their stuff and they're gone. In the afternoon, if you're going through and you're in the queue and you're going through the parking lot to pick up whomever, they might not be right there. So then you're stopping and waiting and where are they? Whereas a lot of times a parent will say, I'm going to be down the street when you're ready. I'll be hovering.
Right, that could be. Yeah.
So oftentimes it's not the same timing because
I agree.
you're
I
waiting
agree.
for that person to get, they got the stuff in the locker, they forgot their book, and then I'm assuming that Holy Family is going to keep those cars moving through in the after, or turning or whatever they're doing in the afternoon to pick up through that parking lot. So
And
you've got a
that's
different
what I've
dynamic.
That's what I've observed in my experience. I think there's something real about parents trying to be the first person in line. And
I don't know what you're talking about.
and if it means arriving there an hour before and reading a book in your car for an hour so that you can be the first person in line.
'Cause that's a long wait if you're at the end of that line.
That's definitely real. But yeah, for those residents, as you mentioned on Ramona, that's for it to be every single day and not be able to back out of the driveway or just
right.
about that. Definitely a nuisance.
And it was interesting at pickup time, the end of the day, there were students being released out of the gate, the Holy Family gate, at Rollin. So maybe because they're of a certain age or level, and so they're allowed, maybe that's why. But then they would go to cars waiting, right, on Ramona. so what's interesting too, what's really problematic about this, well, one of the really problematic things is that, the piece where the lineup goes up Ramona and then turns right on Oak and then left into the school, that piece on Oak, it's very odd because it's not, there's parking there. So they're turning right off Ramona onto Oak. Sometimes there's a space for them to line up and sometimes they have to sort of pull out and pull back in and squeeze in between parked cars. It's a very strange, it's not a loading zone. So it's not there just for them. It's sort of like what goes on Ramona south of Oak, but there it's a little more orderly. But it's just a very strange, and because you also have through traffic, on Oak going east between Ramona and Fremont, and they're sharing the road with these parents who are pulling in and pulling out, and it's a very strange, doesn't seem to be the safest, most organized way of handling things. Anyway, we're on it. There it goes. All right, next up, item 6, COVID-19 ad hoc committee. Finally, someone else. Commissioners Dunlap and Lou, do you have anything to share with us?
All right, we've met with Wes from Active SGV a handful of times, and he's given us weekly updates on the progress of the outreach for the Mission Street concept. And he informed us that there was a big visit with city staff and some members of the business community to Glendora to see how their installation worked. And he told us that he received valuable feedback and that the outreach to the local businesses in South Pasadena was progressing. So that's kind of where we're at.
Great.
Do you have anything to add? Oh, okay.
So I'll just take on to that and say I was part of the field trip to Glendora, which was fascinating. And I have a couple of photos, but I'll wait for commissioner comments to share them just so people can see what they've done there. But that's great. That's great work. Thank you. And I know the Wes's group distributed these slow streets brochures to the streets that are on the list, asking good questions and for input. So that was great to see. And council liaison Primmeth may get to it, but I saw and heard that at long last that the issues that the city was confronting with Alta over the terms of the contract have been resolved, it looks like, and that hopefully that will the revised contract will be approved tomorrow, and then Alta can move forward. So that'll be good to see as well.
Question, just sort of looking at Mission, the art crawl, which was Saturday. A lot of the stores put out, assortments and, had special vendors out there, activities on Mission, and, and with the food trucks but overall, I mean, the logistics and everything seemed great. Like all of the stores and, I didn't see any safety issues really. I didn't see any. I know our weather has not gotten really, cold for LA area, but it seemed that, from a standpoint of looking at what accommodations the retailers and stuff are making in the restaurants and what you saw from like a Mike and Ann's, what you were seeing for Arrow and Griffin's and all of them. I mean, it just seemed to be working really, really well.
It was a great turnout as well. I went out and participated in it. It was impressive. Yeah. Great. I think this will probably be a fast one. So unless anything else on COVID, safe streets, okay. Next up, agenda item 7, preferential parking policy ad hoc committee. Anything to report or any updates?
No new real update. We are still awaiting some feedback from city staff on the information that we prepared. I'm happy to re-forward it along to them if it needs to be bumped up in the top of anyone's inbox. But anyway, so I think the next steps would really be to get their feedback on that, and certainly the community needs an opportunity to shape that document a little bit more, or to speak into the process. I can kind of give you an overview of how it's structured. I know at the county, so in Los Angeles County Code, there's a section for preferential parking districts. And it basically includes like definitions, how permits are issued, granting, in the county's case, the board, the authority to issue these permits, as well as it sets like the permit level, the petition level for the amount of petitions that need to be received, how fees are issued, how, districts are created and dissolved. And then a lot of the nitty gritty of the policy. The internal practice that sort of happens at the departmental level or the discretion of the public works director. And so that could either be elevated to incorporated into city code, or it can be a bit more informal ad hoc thing that doesn't have to go through a formal ordinance. So, and then code also lists all the preferential parking districts and the fees associated with each one. So I think those are really the next steps, is to get input on that, on the workability of those processes and what city staff and their expertise might feel is best for the city and works for the city. And then a determination of how much to include in city code and how much can be handled with departmental practice or just some sort of internal policy.
That's great. Yeah.
So that's no update, but
And I
That's another
remember, I'm
question.
going to get to, thank you.
Just a
Um,
quick question. I
yeah.
know in your presentation, when you shared your overview recommendations and such, one of the things that was highlighted was the issue of enforcement, and that the costs involved in enforcement and personnel and all of the record keeping, everything need to be done, that was certainly a consideration that needed to be looked at. And just need to make sure that, whenever that we hear from the city, that's got to be planned and looked at, so that, there's if we go down routes, that it makes sense that we're doing it appropriately in the right manner, and that we're enforcing it, or else it doesn't have value.
yeah, that's a great point.
And I think when we last talked about this too, I think Councilmember Primuth mentioned that since this is something that's going to require resources, right, to develop and to implement and administer, that at the appropriate time it would need to be presented to city council. Is going to have to give some direction, I think, on priorities and moving forward with this. And I know the strategic plan is in the works,
Yes, we had our meeting.
right? So I'm guessing this might be part of it. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the final decision, what the process will look like, would of course go to city council
Right.
for their consideration.
Great, well, thank you. And I think that might be a nice transition to city council liaison communications. Councilmember Primuth.
Thank you, everyone. The city council met as a body in two different strategic planning meetings and came up with quite a list of action items. We used a lot of the same strategic goals from the 2019 plan because they were broad enough and they covered all the right areas. But we added a number of specific objectives and updated that substantially. So that'll be coming out, and a number of them related to this commission would be two in particular. One, there was a council member very much interested in coming up with a parking management plan for the whole city. And I think the preferential parking districts would be one of the sub items under that plan. I think that's probably going to move forward. The other would be an update to the bike mobility plan. I think the plan was adopted either in 2011 or 2012. Actually, if anyone remembers, let me know. But it's almost 10 years.
I think 2011 sounds right.
2011,
Yeah.
right. So those are two things that I think came up, and the surveys that went out to the community and came back ahead of the strategic planning meeting had a number of really high priorities. Probably the highest was emergency preparedness. And then, of course, as you might imagine, equally almost equal important was road maintenance and street improvements. So I think there's going to be a complete revamp of the capital improvement project list. And there's going to be a new effort to maybe really focus on what are the priorities that are in line with the survey results and where the council wants to go. In other news, the council has received the news that SB 381 was signed by the governor, which creates an opportunity for the city to participate in the transfer of the Caltrans properties, approximately 68 of them. And there are now two waterfalls. One is the original Roberti Affordable Sales Act rules waterfall, and the second waterfall is SB 381. So as we prepare to figure out how the city's going to navigate that, there will be a new ad hoc committee formed. And we decided at the last meeting not to proceed with immediate formation of a committee while we engage in what I described, not necessarily the whole council, as a strategic pause to make sure that we're actually pursuing the right path for the Caltrans transfers. We have a number of very active residents and an active preservation foundation, and we want to let them weigh in on our approach, as well as the planning commission. So, because a lot of the Caltrans homes, those transfers would come with affordability covenants and restrictions for the city. And that ties in with the RENA numbers that we're trying to achieve through our housing element, which is before the planning commission. So we want to make sure we do a proper collaboration with all of these bodies. Tomorrow night's agenda, I think there was reference to the Alta contract. I think that has been worked out. There's that's I think going to be presented as an updated item. And if any, I don't think there's anything else on the agenda related to this commission, but I would like to get an update on the construction. We do have RFPs out for some major construction projects, and I think we've let at least one of the contracts. And this is the corridor improvements going down Fair Oaks and then over to Fremont. So hopefully we can have a staff member give the commission an update on that. Yes.
Mr. Councilmember, I believe the West Coast Arborist is on the agenda for tomorrow.
It is
tomorrow night.
a renewal
That's
of the contract.
one that we were concerned about only because in lieu of transportation is obviously the Arroyo Parkway Freeway. When we come up, you can't see our city name and sign. We understood that one of the limitations for that is that we didn't have a contract in place to handle the landscaping needs and tree trimming and things that would be required to improve the visuals for that and the look of it. So if it does go through, hopefully we can get that started, because
Yeah,
it is kind of sad that our entrance to the city, our gateway, is kind of looking a little shabby.
Yeah, that I think that's right. Well, we'll make sure the scope of work includes that. I'll do that. And since you mentioned Arroyo, I just wanted to throw out, the commission recommended some safe streets at one of its emergency meetings in early September. And I had a contact from somebody who thought that Arroyo Drive should have been included and should be included in some way. And I actually don't know what has happened with that request. They laid out a case that, Arroyo Drive is pretty heavily trafficked. I don't know if it has the same multimodal kinds of traffic, pedestrian, bike, etc., as Grand, which is part of the safe streets. So, I just thought that was some feedback I received on safe street selection. Overall, I think the commission did a great job, and so the feedback has been positive. But that was just one point at which people thought there could be an addition. But the other comment I've received is I think we're going to try to push and get an extension on spending the money. Metro has been pretty firm about having it spent by the end of the year, and I don't know if there's enough people, jurisdictions struggling to get the money out the door to implement these needed improvements, makes no sense to not give us an extension. I mean, the only reason they wouldn't is because the accountants want to close off the fiscal year. And that's not necessarily good. It's not even a fiscal year because these all run on fiscal year, which is July 1st to June 30th. So why the calendar year end makes no difference to them.
One of the quick comments I made, Councilmember and Chair, I believe a number of years ago, Arroyo was looked at from the community, and certain steps were taken, I think, to mitigate some things, but everything that was looked at, I believe a lot of the community members rejected, such as bike paths, certain things that were looked at and considered by the former Public Works Commission for that particular area, and they did not want it. So it's interesting that it's coming back up again, because I believe edge lines that Commissioner Fisher had recommended at one point, and some other mitigation steps were taken to address some concerns the community had, but that when it was looked at a number of years, I want to say 5 years ago, I might be wrong on my timing, but that the community were not supportive. So I'm a little bit confused.
Yeah. I don't know the background, but I don't know if it was a formal request. I just thought I would relay that just to give you some feedback. I think overall, though, you've made a good selection.
And I'll just tie on to some of the Aurora Drive front. So there were, before you arrived, I referred to the fact that we had 9 email written comments from Aurora Drive residents and interested parties requesting that it be included in the Slow Streets project, and that'll be part of the record. And I know some of them, and you know, John and I live very close. We're well aware of the street, and we actually talked about it at our special meeting. And one of the concerns was some of the ones you mentioned about maybe not quite as multimodal as Grand, but the other, it was the comment, well, it may not be prudent to have slow streets on 2 parallel streets that adjacent to each other. Thank you. That was the word. But nonetheless, what I told them, I suggested to them that they should submit comments because they had reached out to me, and also in that Slow Streets program, or that handout, there's an email, and I said you can go, or web address, and you can go there and submit your street, you know, request to be included in the program, and as the program progresses, depending on what resources are deployed, if there are additional funds to do something, then maybe something can be considered for your street. It may not be a full slow streets treatment, whatever that might look like, but maybe it could be something to help you all out. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Commissioner Hughes said. Yes, we did try to reach out to the community on Arroyo Drive. I think a study was even conducted by a consulting firm. We had discussed options to try to slow down traffic because there are some occasional drivers who drive much too fast along Arroyo Drive, and it carries a fair amount of traffic. But at the end, the residents there did not want to call too much attention to their street with a center line, an edge line, bike lanes, or whatever. And the only thing we're able to implement on Arroyo Drive was a speed feedback sign to advise motorists that they may be going too fast or to check their speed. And that was the best we were able to do. So it's a dilemma. Many of us see a need to do something there, but yet the residents don't want to call attention to that street as well.
Right. Thank you,
Yep.
Councilmember Primwood. Anything else?
No, that
Okay.
concludes my report.
Thank you so much. All right, next up, item 9, Commissioner Communications. If it's all right, I'll just go left to right. Commissioner Dunlap.
Sure, and I wish I would have met the agenda deadlines so that this could have been shared on the agenda as a discussion item. But if you recall, in August, we discussed some way to collect traffic collision data on Meridian Avenue. We had discussions of like what an email, just setting up an email address and have people emailing an email if they have information on a traffic collision. And the idea came up just to set up a form. And I took an initial look at setting up a form, what that form could look like. Again, it's draft. I've never done this in my work, so I don't know how worthwhile this effort will be. I know that typically a lot of the injury collisions or the more severe collisions do in fact get reported to PD, like an actual report is taken, and sometimes the ones that aren't reported tend to be maybe some of the parked vehicle collisions or very minor like fender benders. But Liana, can you bring up the form? How do I turn on this TV?
Oh, no, it's the same.
So, got it? Everyone got it? So feel free to look at it critically. You know, certainly we welcome Ghassan and Director Abbas's input on it if they think it'll be worthwhile. The first part just includes a preamble, the purpose of it. I would recommend we list known incidents so that residents aren't reporting incidents that we already have information on. There is a spot for first and last name, the person's address and email. And then if you could click next, Liana. A space for the collision date, a field for the location. So enter the intersection, the address, an approximate location. Was it 200 feet south of Pine or where? A question about the person's role in the incident, were they involved in it? Were they a witness or other? A description of the factors that led to the collision. You know, did it result in the injury to a person? So yes or no. No would be property damage only. So that would just be maybe damage to a vehicle or damage to, say, a mailbox. And then a certification that the information is factual. And so, oh, I'm sorry, I missed at the bottom, a place to upload a file, like an image or a PDF, if they happen to have a news article, or maybe they want a PDF, a Facebook post, or have a picture of the incident that they could share. So that's a basic form. Again, I'm not sure, I've never done this in my work, so I don't know what we will get or what will be received if it's worthwhile. But if we want to proceed with this, here's certainly an option.
Sorry, I wanted to thank Commissioner Dunlap for doing this, putting it together, and it's part of our effort to try to collect additional data that we requested from staff and then from residents to evaluate additional measures on Meridian Avenue. That's sort of the context of this. So this is a great start, and I think part of my task was, once this was done, to put together some kind of a cover letter to the community, and then once this is posted on our website, then we get it out to them and have them start submitting information.
Chair Abelson, I encourage you to have the city attorney review the form as well as the police chief, just to make sure those departments, which are, you know, related, see if there's any issues with that form or with the city's collection of that type of data.
Okay, great. Those are good comments. I think we'll wait for Ghassan to return, and then we can talk to him about everything that needs to happen next. And yeah, at the end of the day, hopefully it's productive if we can get it out, that it'll give because I know the residents throughout this whole process that led to the all-way stop at Oak and Meridian was their concern that there were so many incidents that were not being reported. And so this gives them a way to submit additional data that we can use to consider what additional devices might be appropriate. Did anybody have any thoughts or comments about the form or anything that we might want to consider adding to it or anything like that?
But I'm assuming they can report any street. It's not just the Meridian, but any street where there's possibly accidents. We might want to then have total, be able to keep tally
Well, this is designed
for
for
Meridian.
Meridian.
Maybe,
But I'm just thinking
I-
if we find out like if because there's streets that might not have physical
Right.
accidents, but every week someone's car is getting sideswiped or the mailbox is getting hit or
I,
trash cans getting knocked over. I just don't know if
Mhm.
that's possibly good information for us to have as opposed to just limit it to the one street.
right, certainly if it's worthwhile, it would be worth expanding. However, I think this is very experimental. And, I haven't seen a lot of people do this in their work where they're collecting collision information directly from the residents. Normally, it will come from a police report. So it might be, if it's worthwhile, it might be best to pilot it at least with one street for a while and see how it goes. See if people have anything to report or if maybe they're reporting incidents that the city is already aware of or they know of, or they're not, or the information maybe provided isn't useful. Pilot it there, and then if it works, you can certainly expand it citywide. Right now, that form is a Google form. So if it were expanded citywide, I imagine we probably want it to be something a little bit more slick, a little bit more official than what it is in its very like draft state.
I think Ghassan, oh, sorry. Ghassan did mention that, I think it was at our last meeting, that there is a phone number folks can call to report phone in information regarding accidents that may not have been reported to police at the time of the accident. So there is a vehicle, no pun intended, for folks to submit information right now.
Do you remember the
No.
deadline? Was it 30 days?
Oh, was there a deadline?
Was there a certain number of days?
I don't remember hearing a deadline after the time of the incident to
Hmm.
report it. I did not.
Okay.
One of the things we might want to consider is see if we can make sure to promote that so the public knows, like whether it's in the city's monthly newsletter or on their website or something, because I bet a lot of people don't even know that.
I think we talked about or asked Ghassan if he would follow up the police department to see if that's something that's made publicly available so people know.
Who do you envision would be the custodian of this information? Public Works Department or the police department?
It could be, I can actually think of one more. It could be a planning department. It could be someone doing more long range planning.
No,
But
but this is short.
Okay.
This is action oriented.
well, I've seen more data like this collected, not so much about collisions, but as part of planning efforts, as part of working with the community to develop, say, a pedestrian plan or a bicycle plan, where it's not used to, because if you're trying to justify some sort of traffic control, like a signal or a sign, you're gonna need like a splitters report, or you're gonna need some sort of police report. You're not going to be able to base it off of this data, but it could, I guess, public, if we receive it and it's short term, I guess short term would be Public Works. If it's something we want to act, if it's something worth acting on.
Yeah, we'll see how it works for this once we see what type of feedback.
It certainly is, assuming it clears the hurdles it needs to clear, it certainly gives the residents what they're asking for in terms of an opportunity to provide input. If it's not taken advantage of, or the information we receive is duplicative, then we know that maybe this is not something that's necessary or that needs to be. Yeah, okay. All right, so we'll keep going down the path. Anything else? Commissioner Dunlap? Thank you very much. Commissioner Liu, anything?
No communications from me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Fisher?
I'll save this for maybe next month. Early in the year, Commissioner Hughes had raised the issue with staff regarding making needed changes at the intersection of Mission and Meridian, where the gold line goes through. And the old Public Works Commission had identified funds, I think, in the amount of $80,000, where we would hire a consultant to figure out how to make needed changes, and then we'd buy the software and hardware to make those changes. Out of the 5 recommendations we had, only 1 was implemented, and I think it got lost in the shuffle, or staff didn't understand what to do. The improvement that was made was that as northbound trains pull up, it wouldn't activate the gates at Mission Meridian until they reached the station. Before they were approaching at a point south of El Centro, and then that would activate the gates, and the gates were down much too long. The other improvements that need to be made is that there needs to be a pedestrian phase when the gates are down. People are crossing the street. They've got enough time to do it. They say, why not? But the signals say, don't walk, or steady hand. That needs to be changed. The other change is that there needs to be a leading pedestrian interval because of the offset you have between the crosswalk and stop traffic. For example, as you're coming south on Meridian, you make a wide turn before you reach the crosswalk, and you may not see PEDs as you initiate your turn because they're right around the bend there. So there needs to be a leading pedestrian interval so that PEDs are well into the street and seen before vehicles start to turn right. We have that same condition for westbound Mission at Meridian. Another problem I noted, again, I have coffee on that corner. When it was Buster's, and then it was Mother Moose, and now Wallace Jones. There's a software problem in the timing where sometimes for up to 28 seconds, the signal can be read in all directions because a train is coming, but it's far, far upstream. And there could be a way then to keep the traffic moving without that 28-second all red. Sometimes it's less, but it can be up to 28 seconds. And the final thing is that when there is preemption, let's say at 4:35 or 5:30 in the afternoon, you still get the same 28 seconds of green while you're on Mission Street. You may be queued back all the way to Orange Grove, but you're only going to get 28 seconds. So the signal needs to be upgraded to have advanced detection so that when there are the longer queues, they will extend the green so that you have recovery after the preemption. And so we brought those issues up. They were intended to be accomplished as part of the $80,000 that was programmed. It didn't happen. Don't completely understand why. But I'd like to maybe at another meeting, bring some photos to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about and to get staff kind of focused on that. Anyway, I think I've used more than 3. Thank you.
No, that was great and usable, and I'm going to let Commissioner Hughes go, but I want to echo your concerns because this was very important to us a few years ago in the Public Works Commission, and right that there was some incremental improvements that were made, and there was a bit of a difference, but there were still all these other benefits that were lagging, weren't taking place, and it just got lost, I think, in staff turnover and various other challenges. And I know the money was earmarked for it. And I know also that on top of the strategic plan, that discussions are coming up about the CIP. And this may be a very opportune time to make sure this project is on that list so that it can finally get implemented. And I just a comment, you listed a bunch of things. Do you think that the 80,000 is sufficient to address these types of changes, or are we talking more serious investment?
No, I think we probably need to upgrade the controller. We'd have to add some advanced detection. We'd have to hire someone who knows how to program for some of the changes that are needed, but I have no reason to believe it should cost more than
Commissioner Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On that point too, just yesterday, as well as last Friday, saw a lot of people, again, long queue, like 6 o'clock-ish, people doing U-turns,
Hmm.
which is so dangerous because there was literally one person made a U-turn waiting in the queue to cross going eastbound on Mission and and somebody was pulling out from parking in front of Radika
Hmm.
and literally barely missed each other. And the U-turns happen a lot. And it's just unfortunate. I think we could fix that because people are just considered waiting way too long or trying to find a way to get around and go through. I just wanted to share that I shared, and Leona, thank you for sending out the article regarding the new law that the governor passed regarding cities having more control over speed limits. And it's still, coming down. It looks like the timing, but I thought it would be interesting just to we all have it on our radar because speed limits are something that always our community is talking about, concerns about safety. But I know Commissioner Fisher, you made comments about it, but we'll see how it can be executed within our own city and where would be appropriate. But it looks like there's tools that might provide more flexibility. So I just wanted to share that.
Did everyone get it? I don't know if y'all had a chance to read it or not.
Yes, it's a bill certainly that's of interest to like our profession. So in our day-to-day work, we're certainly aware of the changes in that bill. Or in the law now.
Right.
Signed by the governor.
I think we should definitely highlight this to not just public works staff, but also planning staff, as the way I understand it is written, it won't be implemented for a couple of years, but there are things that local jurisdictions do need to do ahead of time with regards to their mobility element or their general plan to designate or justify the need for lower speed limits in certain areas. There's all sorts of qualifications on what you can do and can't do. So it's not just a simple bill of, name your own speed limit. There are very, very specific, I'd say measures for when this is appropriate. But it does give cities a little bit more flexibility. But I do urge that not just South Pasadena, but all city staffs take a long look at it and plan ahead for doing the homework ahead of time for when this is enacted.
Yeah, and I did submit some comments on that, and I just wanted to point out that for some time, cities have had a lot of flexibility on their speed limits. For example, any local residential street can be automatically 25. It's only if you want to enforce by radar on a 40-foot street or wider that you have to show that if you want to use radar that the speed limit is justified. Otherwise, it's default 25. There's a lot of discussion about the 85th percentile, and that's designed so that law enforcement can target the unreasonable drivers, the top 15% who are driving unreasonably, not the 85% who are presumed to be driving with the norm of traffic. But they can also consider collision history. And if you have a street that has a high collision rate compared to other like streets, that's a good reason for lowering the speed limit. If you also have surprise conditions, a blind curve, limited sight distance or whatever, that's another reason to lower the speed limit. That's already codified. If you have high pedestrian activity, like in a retail area, that's something you can consider as well. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that until now, speed limits should not be based only on the 85th percentile speed. There's all these other factors that you're allowed to consider. But the idea is that you consider the 85th percentile and all these other factors, and then you lower the speed limit based on a good bona fide reason, based on a justifiable reason, based on a reason you can document using all these other factors. So I think, cities do have flexibility. I think they should use that flexibility. And I think they should justify their recommended speed limits based on good, solid data rather than, subjective reason. So that's why I commented the way I did.
Yeah, and I'll add, like, I think I'm supportive of AB 43 in that I hope that it allows us to take maybe a fresh look at setting speed limits or take into other things like Commissioner Liu mentioned. There will be some aspects that the city needs to prepare. Cities need to prepare for. For example, one of those items is like a safety plan or a safety corridor where a certain percentage of your streets, the law currently says no more than 1/5, are identified as a safety corridor, where you experience the most severe crashes. So that would be a consideration for taking that additional reduction. Whatever the speed limit is, still the most effective way to slow the traffic is just by good engineering design. And it's by, tightening roadways, maybe narrowing lanes, curb extensions where appropriate, where people want to drive the speed limit and the roadway is designed in a way where they have to drive at an appropriate speed. Yeah, so I think regardless of whether we support the speed limit or not, I think engineering design is really the best way to manage the speeds throughout our city. And I will add, as far as the safety, a safety plan, I think for, if my fellow practitioners can correct me if I'm wrong, the new Highway Safety Improvement Program guidelines, so the HSIP guidelines, I think they may begin to require that cities have a local road safety plan to receive HSIP funding. Don't quote me on that. That may have just been in a draft guideline that I commented on or I provided internally. But I think there's a lot of push for jurisdictions to develop local road safety plans or Vision Zero plans or something similar.
I can confirm that is definitely true, and that all the cities in this area are scrambling to put those local road safety plans together.
And I think they have to be renewed every 5 years. If there's a time requirement on it.
I'm glad this came up. This is a good question for Director Abbas to see if this is something that we have or are working on.
Yeah, as someone who helped develop his agency's local road safety plans, they're certainly not easy. It takes some time.
Perfect. Well, thank you all. Some really good information during the comments today. So I'll wrap it up with hopefully some fun pictures. Liana, would you mind? I just shared 6 pictures with Liana to share with you. So in a nutshell, as Commissioner Liu mentioned a little while ago, I believe it was October 5th. Yes. Whatever works for you. No worries. The Active SGV organized a field trip to Glendora for the Chamber of Commerce to take a look at the parklets that Glendora was able to implement in response to COVID-19. And they actually used Measure M funds for these parklets. And if anybody here has further information that they want to add regarding them, that generally or specifically, it's great. I just wanted to make sure that can you make the picture full screen, or is that this is fine. So this is their main street, and it's their version of Mission Street. Very quaint, lovely town. It's about double the size and double the population. They have a dedicated transportation manager who used to work at Metro, who helped get all of this implemented. So what they have, and you can scroll through them if you go to the next one, and I'll just describe them. So they started with temporary, and now they have these sort of quasi-permanent installations. They took out there was existing diagonal parking along the curb. And so they installed these parklets which have a metal sort of substructure and then a wood structure on top. And then, wait, can you go back? Thanks, sorry. One of the interesting things, and hopefully it was this last picture. Yeah, if you'll see here, they have this metal cover that goes over where the gutter is to flip up and clean out the gutter where leaves and debris and everything else could collect. But anyway, what was very interesting about them, and you can move forward, is not only the sort of the simple, elegant design. They came from a Scandinavian country. I can't remember which one right now. Might have been Norway. It reminded me a little of IKEA, but of course much more complex, and I won't say anything else. But very easily constructed and implemented, and relatively easy to remove if necessary. But what was interesting about them is in terms of the barriers around them. So here, yeah, if you could stop here. So this is southbound on the street, whose name I cannot remember at the moment. So they have this railing that goes around the parklet, and then all that's really there sort of protecting or separating the parklet from the travel lane is this one bollard. And these aren't sunk. Sinking might be a different approach, maybe a better one, I don't know. But it was very interesting that they had a very, very simple protective barrier for these things. It seemed to be effective. There hadn't been any crashes, injuries, damage by the fact that they didn't have like solid K rails or those water filled devices. And you can cycle through. Liana. Yeah, so it's like it's a metal frame underneath, and then the wood slats on top, and then the metal railing all around. It's very, very simple, but it connects seamlessly with the curb and their walkways are larger. They have the benefit of a decent sized sidewalk and then like a parkway, and then the street. Whereas I think our sidewalks on Mission tend to be pretty narrow. So if you could move forward, yeah, that would be great. That's fine. And they had them a few different colors, but they all had this simple design with that one bollard at the outside edge, both on the north and the south. And it seemed to be very successful. It wasn't yet lunchtime, but there were a number of these spread out across, up and down the street, and many of them were just completely full. Very, lot of energy, and it really activated the district, which before was much quieter. And he said, if you could go back a couple of pictures to the one with the barricades. One of the transportation managers said one of the issues that came up at the beginning was the concern of merchants that they were losing parking, right? That these were taking the place of all these diagonal parking spots in front of their stores. Perfect, thank you. But they have off-street parking just as we do, and that more than compensated for or addressed the concern, and the increase in business generated by these parklets seemed to allay the concerns the merchants had about any loss of parking right in front of their storefronts. And then they had one cross street, which was this. So this is the street intersecting their main street there, where they had it completely closed off using these concrete planters with relatively drought tolerant plantings inside. And then they have like benches and such on the other side on the street for additional dining. And that's sort of something I think that's been imagined potentially for that area of Meridian between Mission and El Centro, that this sort of plaza-like effect. So anyway, I just wanted to share this with you to show you what a neighboring city had done with parklets. And I know that that's something we're thinking of doing with the Slow Streets program. And it seemed simple, it seemed efficient, it seemed relatively easy to implement. And I was hopeful that if Glendora could do it, that maybe we could do something like that on some kind of at least pilot experimental basis to see if it could be successful here, but it seemed like a great, great experiment there that they're continuing with. Anyway, that is all I have. Anybody have any thoughts, comments, questions, concerns?
Did they mention how the funding, was it from city funds? So they use like equivalent like that slow street fund to do this?
They
or
used,
capital funds or-
and I asked him twice to make sure, he said Measure M, that he was able to justify the use of Measure M funds for this project. Yeah. Which was interesting, I thought, and good for him. So anyway.
Yeah,
Yes,
Larry, did I understand correctly that there have been no crashes to these, this metal railing?
yes,
None at all?
that's what he said.
Okay, because I'd be curious to know how they would hold up with a crash, because I know that anything that's implemented in the street has to be crash worthy. Technical definition for that, but it's great that these have worked. It's lightweight, semi-aesthetic. The only thing I wonder about is a crash.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised by the minimal protection surrounding these devices, but, and I don't, obviously it was, I'm assuming they had engineering support for what they did. I would really hope so. And certainly you could do something more robust than that. But what I was happy to see is that it didn't require the obtrusive concrete K-rails that we currently have on mission. That there maybe are other options that we have for implementing partlets while at the same time protecting, the users from potential collisions. So,
I've seen the city of LA, they have the big gray planters, but I think they double as some sort of physical
oh,
protection that they'll put on the, what's that, the downstream side of their parklet, so that if someone were to crash into it, it's at least that large planter like slows the vehicle before they're in like the parklet area.
yeah, that's a fantastic idea.
I've also sent Gassan a product that will kind of address this issue. We see it used around college stadiums, and the Rose Bowl uses it quite a bit. You can see it in Old Town Pasadena currently. And the beauty of it is that you purchase them for about $7,000 to $8,000 a piece. And they are kind of like a doorstop, except for cars. And they require minimal personnel to install. So it seems to be a popular product up and down Southern California to protect farmers markets. So that's one thing I'll keep bugging public works staff about. It seems to address a lot of our needs currently in the city and potential future needs if we were to implement such a project. But even for farmers markets, I've been told that Santa Barbara uses them quite effectively.
Oh, that's great. That's good to hear.
On that note, do we know, we were renting the K-rails? Do we know where we are, what our timeframe still is with those? To the city and the chamber and such? I thought we had them for 6-9 months. As part of that fight, the numbers we had looked at one point. And then do we extend? Do we know where we are?
We did extend. I'm not sure how long.
I know planning is
I know.
running that.
Yeah. Leanna, you haven't heard, have you, about where we are with the K-rails? Like where we are with our rental of them? Because I know we rented them.
Yeah, I-
And
I love that optimism about the pandemic, 6 to 9 months.
So I
That'll
remember
be
it
on
coming,
now.
I remember it coming before council to renew, and I just don't recall how long we renewed. And
yeah, I'll have to go look at this.
it,
But I
it,
I
it
just
may have
wanted
been
to
a
get to some
May.
point, and all of a sudden we realized that, oh gosh, we didn't renew it and it got picked up. But
Yeah, I think the initial alfresco K-rails went in maybe June, July of 2020.
Mm.
So a 1-year rental. So you might check the April, May council agenda.
I can try to find out too.
And then I'm sure staff will have.
'cause the other
Got it.
question is if we do know that the rental timeframe agreement is coming up in the next X amount of months, then, and we know that the success, so there's, and as we look at mission screening, we look at all of the COVID, ad hoc, that then maybe then we look at other alternatives as you're suggesting. So we have sort of in our back pocket, plan A, plan B. Do we keep the K rails because of the cost or whatever, and we figure that out? Or do we put in and look at the next phase that becomes more permanent, that we buy or invest in, or and know that it's something that we can do that will be a long going benefit to the city.
Yeah, well, I know a primary subject of Alta's impending contract is designing something, parklets or something for
Right.
Mission Street, right? Which I guess would replace or supplement, yeah, the K rails. So
Right.
hopefully that's something that they'd be looking at if they're coming up with the design, is how would, whatever they're coming up with, with the existing K rails. Well, we'll know in a couple months, because unless we get extended, we're gonna need something. Okay, great. Thank you all very much. Last item up is item 10, staff liaison communications. I know it says Rogan Fund project update. I know Gusan's not here, but I'll ask Liana if she has anything for us as the sole staff representative. Okay. Anything else you want to share with us? Announcements? Okay. Okay, great.
Can I ask a quick question? Was it last week that was the seniors pickup day week? Did we get good response from our community? Good, because a lot of people with them being stuck at home the last year plus accumulated, and a lot of times the seniors and very limited for them. So this is so nice. The seniors, they could just one of their days, or let them know that they could pick up.
Right.
And they could easily do it from their home.
And I know I took advantage of dumpster day this past weekend. I don't know if anybody else did, but it's handy. What do we get? Is it twice a year? Yeah. Okay, great. Well, I think it looks like we've come to the end of our agenda. So if there's nothing further, I will call this meeting adjourned. Right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.